The MCU has a lot to offer in 2022. Of anything that's come out so far, Moon Knight is one of the most eccentric offerings. That includes his costume. We'll be taking a look at how his costume has changed over time. Despite its plot holes, chaotic narrative, and generally mixed reviews from fans and critics, the show broke new ground for Marvel. Can Season 2 fix the problem that plagued Season 1? Who is he? Well, that's a long story that begins in ancient Egypt. Mark Spector, who is also known as Moon Knight, works as a mercenary with Dissociative Identity Disorder, DID, until he becomes the conduit for the Egyptian moon god Khonshu. Each of Spector's identities are distinct characters, including Stephen Grant, an employee of a gift shop who suffers from blackouts and memories of another life. Kevin Feige, the executive producer, describes Moon Knight as an action hero who jumps out of buildings and gets into fights. But he's not your average Marvel superhero. Moon Knight is a superhero with at least one foot planted firmly in the spookier corners of the Marvel Universe. The character actually first appeared as an antagonist in an issue of Werewolf by Night and has always flirted with the supernatural, owing to his ties to an Egyptian moon god of vengeance. Never has that been more true than in the current Moon Knight comic series, where the hero protects those who travel by night from earthly and unearthly threats, and populates its supporting cast and antagonists with vampires. A different beast altogether, a world apart from everything we've seen so far from Marvel's cinematic universe. Let's take a moment to appreciate Oscar Isaac's performance in the series opener. We're referring to the one-man show he put on, a show that is almost entirely dependent on whether you believe the professionally good-looking, charismatic A-lister is a slightly pathetic, friendless mess of a man. Moon Knight stumbles out of the gate by being utterly confused, inept, and generally dysfunctional. However, after a few issues, the comic builds into a satisfyingly complex tale involving mental illness, delusion, deception, power plays for the souls of humanity, and more. Moon Knight does things a little differently than other Marvel Cinematic Universe projects, starting at the end of the story and letting us watch our main character try to claw his way out of an impossible situation. As we said, Oscar is the confident centerpiece here. The flaws that might be found in the Moon Knight design are countered by Isaac's dual performance and his ability to find poignancy and purity in an otherwise CGI-filled and wild universe. The most popular verdict at the end of Season 1, Moon Knight faced an unusual and difficult challenge, representing DID in a dark, gritty superhero story without adding more stigma to a subject that pop culture has already struggled to show with accuracy and compassion. Season 1 sort of managed this, in that it clearly showed how DID works, but it still sensationalized the disease. Could Moon Knight's newest addition fix the show's biggest problem? The alter ego could mean a change in stigma. Oscar Isaac recently dropped a hint that there may be a second season of Marvel's Moon Knight. Hidden in his words was a sign that the show's creators have been doing their research and could improve on the first season's mental health treatment. When asked at New York Comic Con if there would be a Season 2, Oscar Isaac playfully demurred, but eventually said, "All I can say is that this isn't the last we've heard of the system that is Moon Knight. This doesn't necessarily mean there will be a Moon Knight Season 2. Mark Spector, Stephen Grant, Jake Lockley could reappear in a future Marvel crossover project, but whatever Moon Knight's next appearance, it would be nice to see an improvement in how DID is handled." But the show's final moments did hint that further exploration of the character would be forthcoming, and a second season sounds like it could do a better job of staying true to the specifics of dissociative identity disorder. While the Marvel Cinematic Universe has always touched on mental health, Moon Knight is the first time we've seen it explored so explicitly. In WandaVision, Wanda Maximoff appears to be suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. However, she was never referred to as suffering from PTSD, even though her struggle did seem generally accurate, albeit with superpowers. In Moon Knight, we saw a character's diagnosis as a pivotal part of who they are for the first time. Even if the second season never happens, the actor isn't done with superheroes by any means. In an interview with Collider, he shared that he and his childhood friends had created a graphic novel, as well as their shared love of Dungeons & Dragons. Moon Knight is famous for his various weapons, gadgets, and costumes. His trademark, In the Marvel Comics series, The Fist of Khonshu and Protector of the Innocent, Moon Knight has had more costume changes than most superheroes. So just how many have there been? From his earliest appearance, Mark Spector has never been a man to settle on one superhero outfit for any lengthy period of time. Before he was a costume hero, Mark Spector was a mercenary, betrayed by his colleagues and left for dead in the desert. Then, one night, he stumbled upon a statue of the Egyptian moon god Khonshu, who resurrected Spector and made him the Fist of Khonshu. Now donning an eerie white costume, Spector fights to protect the innocent and mete out justice as the Moon Knight. Spector's various costumes are as varied as his mental health. In early stories, the character donned different attires to help him in his quest. Later stories attributed this to the character being diagnosed with a dissociative identity disorder. Sometimes Moon Knight's changes in costume were caused by one of his different personalities manifesting, as seen in the recent Disney Plus Moon Knight TV series. Let's look back at the evolution of Moon Knight's costume over the years. The first Moon Knight costume, as seen in Werewolf by Night number 32, was a little different from what many might consider his classic look. It leaned heavily into black and white chiaroscuro, with the bodysuit being black and his gloves, boots, and cloak being the ghostly white most fans associate with the hero. It's clearly a rough draft of what would eventually become Moon Knight, but it's easily the most notable thing about him. His eyes are hidden beneath a hooded cloak and glow with an eerie light, and by eerie, we mean total nightmare fuel. In his first decade of publication, Moon Knight's classic all-white costume followed as soon as the character began starring in his own ongoing series, and remained largely unchanged throughout this initial run. This is perhaps Moon Knight's most iconic look. Ask any Marvel Comics fan to close their eyes and picture the character, and they'll likely describe this costume. After being canceled in 1984, Moon Knight returned the following year for a 6-issue miniseries, and with the new series, the hero received a costume update. The superhero was given a bit of golden flair by his artist, with wrist bangles, metal shin guards, and a golden belt serving to break up the white of Spector's costume. Perhaps the most significant alteration was the change in the chest symbol. Instead of Moon Knight's classic crescent moon logo, the new outfit boasted an Ankh symbol. Spector would continue to wear this costume in appearances of Moon Knight in West Coast Avengers, but the classic all-white look returned soon after. When the 90s came around, many heroes traded in their classic costumes for new, extreme armored looks. Moon Knight was no exception. Moon Knight's new armored battlesuit was designed to hold its own against the heavily armed vigilantes of the day. He kept his cloak, hood, and overall crescent moon motif, but replaced his all-white spandex with silver shoulder pads, wrist gauntlets, and heavy boots. The armored look only lasted a few issues, but Moon Knight would sport another suit of armor in Vengeance of Moon Knight number 5. Made of carbonadium, he could actually step out of this suit and still control it remotely. In the 2000s, Moon Knight went back to basics, wearing variations on his original black and white costume before ultimately settling once again on a classic all-white outfit. The character's biggest costume change in decades occurred in the pages of Secret Avengers, where he debuted his Mr. Knight look, an all-white 3-piece suit worn in conjunction with his mask. In the 2014 Moon Knight series, the Mr. Knight persona is established as a police consultant, helping out with bizarre street-level crimes. He also gets an updated superhero costume, combining the older black and white and armored looks to create an outfit more in line with modern superhero design. In addition, Moon Knight wears another special suit made up of Khonshu-related artifacts, most notably a giant bird skull that he wears over his mask. Known as his Ghost Ripper armor, Moon Knight dons this outfit to help him fight non-corporeal enemies, such as ghosts and other spirits. Moon Knight has proven his worth as a hero time and time again. As a member of the Avengers, Heroes for Hire, and the unnamed Marvel Knights team, he's established himself as a major player in the Marvel Universe. As the Fist of Khonshu, there will always be a Moon Knight protecting the innocent and watching over the travelers of the night, no matter the costume. We'd love to know if you think there will be a season 2 and what your favorite costume was. Thanks for watching.